Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the House of Kayfabe. I am Brian Resner, and I am sitting here with my best buddy in the whole wide world. Stephen P. New is here. And Stephen, we've got to talk about legal ramifications. And I figured that the best person in the world to talk to about legal ramifications is definitely you, Stephen P. New. And it looks like there may be a lawsuit brewing in the professional wrestling world. And actually, you know, there is, because you are actually representing Pat Buck. For those of you who do not know, Pat Buck is like, about the third highest official in the All Elite Wrestling organization. And he was in the room or something when this whole thing went down, ended up getting suspended as well. And you're representing this man. Tell us a little bit about that to begin.
Yeah, obviously I'm limited with what I can disclose, but what I can disclose is that I represent Pat Buck. He's the executive vice president for talent relations for All Elite Wrestling, and I helped him in the roughly 10 days after Labor Day, after the big fight backstage and what have you. I helped Pat navigate the internal investigation, communications with AEW's legal counsel, who was Chris Peck, because their other legal counsel, Mega Perek, had been backstage and was a witness to a lot of the events. And also the independent third-party investigation, which is still going on, just not relative to Pat Buck. Pat's been cleared of any wrongdoing, returned to his role as executive vice president of All Elite Wrestling, and I'm happy for that. So
he's no longer under suspension.
Yeah, it's no longer under any kind of suspension. I think that the independent third party, Tony Khan, others were just being super, super careful, not knowing. That's the worst unknown is the unknown, right?
Right. You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. So I think they cast with a really wide net. My personal opinion is I thought it was unfair to guys like Pat Buck, Christopher Daniels, Nakazawa, Brandon Cutler, who were suspended.
Anything that gets Brandon Cutler and Nakazawa off my television, I support. But I will say that I don't like seeing anything bad ever happen to Christopher Daniels. Has Christopher Daniels returned to his role? Is he still under suspension?
He has returned to his role, yes.
Okay, great.
So, and you know me, we talk about this a lot offline and when we're not shooting the show. I'm a big proponent of fairness. I understand that life's not fair. But I think when corporations are handling situations, I think they need to try to be as fair as possible. I didn't like the suspension, but, Pat handled himself and we handled the situation very professionally. We worked with AEW's lawyer with the independent third-party investigation. The only thing I wanted to say at the top of the program here, Brian, is that all of the opinions here that I'm going to express tonight, number one, are my own opinions and don't reflect those of Pat Buck, Jim Cornette, any other client that I may have. And number two, they're not based on any communication that Pat has provided with me. It's kind of what I know that's out there from the world of what's been reported. I will tell you that I think that there has been some slant on both sides. And the truth's kind of somewhere right in the middle. And then we can talk about, you said that you thought that a lawsuit was brewing. I disagree with that. I don't think that there's going to be any litigation stem from this unless contract negotiations or contract buyout negotiations ultimately fail. So we're going to have to see where that goes.
We will see. And if you don't know what we're talking about, well, of course, we're talking about the infamous media scrum that turned into the media scrum heard around the world when CM Punk just kind of went into business for himself and went nuts on Colt Cabana, went nuts on Kenny Omega, went nuts on the Bucks and Hangman Adam Page. It's interesting. Hangman Adam Page is completely out of this whole this whole thing. You know, he didn't go to the locker room with the Bucks and Kenny Omega or any of that stuff. But it ended up being a actual physical altercation between Kenny Omega, Ace Steel, CM Punk, and the Bucks. Originally, they had talked about the Bucks kicking the door down. Now it's coming out that did not happen, and that CM Punk actually threw the first punch. So it kind of puts CM Punk in a situation as, can he really do any litigation in this situation? And I guess that comes down to whether it was self-defense or if it wasn't self-defense. And I think that's kind of where we are right now, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm sure that Punk's lawyers are making the best argument that they can, that he felt like the guy who was being attacked. You know, you've got Omega and the Young Bucks coming into his room. He's in there with Ace Steel's injured wife, who's on crutches, and Larry the dog. And so I'm sure that Punk's lawyers are trying to spin that as best they can into, he felt like he was the one being attacked. There's an argument that can be made that a locker room has a sort of an element of privacy to it, you know, and that he was entitled to not be barged in on right at that time. So it's going to be interesting. That fact will give Punk's lawyers a little bit of leverage. You know, it doesn't really matter if they were out in the hall or something and Punk threw the first punch, then I think he's on less legal footing or shakier legal footing to argue, you know, that he was somehow the victim here. With it being inside of his own locker room, then I think he's got a slightly better argument at that point. Although if all the Bucks wanted to do was talk, you know, my contention all along has been everybody should have probably de-escalated that whole situation. I think this obviously was the powder keg getting lit. You know, Brian, you weren't there, but you know that other than you and Rich Quick, the entire House of Kayfabe crew was at the Charleston show. Well,
right.
It was the Charleston show where Punk gave the receipt to Hangman Page and said the apology needs to be as sincere and as public, you know, as the offense, you know. So that was kind of what started that, you know, and we talked about it being so explosive, man, that the first part of the promo before he cut the promo on Moxley, you know, it always seems to be a recurring theme in your career that you're the third best guy in any group that you belong to. The first part of that was the Hangman Page, you know, part. So then all of that, it's back and forth with Mox, leads up to the show in Chicago. He wins the title back, and Punk just decides, you know, whether you want to call it going into business for yourself or he's going to clear the air right there.
And that is what those type of situations are for. You know, if you're going to put CM Punk in front of a live mic and bring some realism to professional wrestling, you got to ride that shit out. That's the thing that I really hate from all this, because this situation resulted in a lot of different things. But one of the biggest casualties of this situation is we're never going to see CM Punk wrestle again. That's the thing that really bothers me, because I do not see CM Punk going back to the WWE, even though that's what he should do. I don't see him doing that. AEW, that bridge is burned. And I mean, we're not going to see him in Impact. So we're not going to see CM Punk wrestle again unless maybe Freddie Prinze Jr. Actually gets that thing off the ground and gives him a call. But I mean, it seems like we're at a point now where CM Punk doesn't play well with others and probably can't get in anywhere. And that is just it's a devastating casualty of this whole situation.
Well, there's several factors to that. If you guys remember when Punk premiered, and I made fun of you for crying about how Punk had been gone for so long and all of that stuff, Do you remember the angle I said I would book first?
I don't know that I do. Remind me.
I said that I would book Punk to run through the entirety of the Dark Order, ending with a Colt Cabana match.
That's, you know what? I do remember you saying that.
Yeah.
You remember?
So the greatest casualty of this for me is I think that if Tony had had his thinking cap on when the stuff with Hangman went on, with the stuff with Colt Cabana and, the Bucks or whomever lobbying for him to keep his job and he got the consolation prize of Ring of Honor. If I'm Tony, I turn that into booking gold. I'm like, look, you guys are going to work with each other. I'm going to book you against each other. And we're going to take this real life heat that you got, and we're going to turn it into something magical in the ring.
All my response is completely Matt Hardy and Edge. If Matt Hardy and Edge can do what they did, then anybody can do anything in professional wrestling. I do not understand how this wasn't turned into the greatest. Is it real? Is it not real? Angle of all
that's
time.
That's what I have said all along. Tony Khan could have had people talking still today, 3 weeks into September, about is this a worked shoot?
Yeah,
or not?
They would have no idea.
And if I were Tony Khan, I'd have gone to the back after the punches were thrown. I said, look, we're all going to go downtown Chicago right now, and we're all going to have a bunch of beers together. And Punk, you can have a water, and we're going to work out a program right now. And I'm calling the shots. I'm saying who's going to go over. I'm going to say what's going to happen, and this is what we're going to turn this into a worked shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And, people aren't going to talk about it, and you're not going to go into business for yourself or run your yah-yahs on your being the elite or social media or to the press, to Dave Meltzer or anything else. We're going to keep this all in-house, and we're going to treat this like a worked shoot, and we're all going to make a bunch of money. We're going to all get a bunch of eyes back on the television sets, because for the first time in a long time, Benoit Sullivan, everybody wanted to know whether that was a worked shoot or not. Did Kevin Sullivan book himself into a divorce? Who knows? But when those two guys got in the ring, it was damn interesting. Edge, Matt Hardy, same thing.
Sullivan, Brian Pillman, same thing.
Yeah.
This has been done before, and this could have been a beautiful way to do it.
Right. It really could have. And, so you've got casualties now. I'm not giving any kind of inside baseball or anything, Brian, but I think you've got some injuries going on with both Punk and Omega, and maybe Tony down the road. If Omega gets cleared and gets fully healthy and everything, and he's not rushed back, if Punk gets fully healthy and not rushed back, then maybe you do the work shoot angle later on. Are you telling me
maybe
that CM Punk versus Kenny Omega, whether it's for the title or whether it's just this nasty grudge match,
it's gold anywhere.
It draws money. Anytime,
anywhere, any place, that's going to draw money. And
it's going to draw big money.
And I really want to believe that's where we're going and that's going to happen. But because of the fact that they're about to buy out his contract, it looks like we're about to see no CM Punk anywhere, anytime. And we know that they can do the work shoot because they did it with the MJF, and they did a very good job with MJF.
Yeah, and
that
they
was
can
a work or a shoot. And we really still don't know. Was that a work or a shoot? We're still in the dark on that. And I like being in the dark on that. I love not knowing. It's that realism that really brings professional wrestling to the forefront and would actually have made AEW's television programs, Dynamite.
And yet another casualty. That was MJF's comeback that night with the big chip. And the next day, nobody's talking about MJF coming back. Everybody's talking about the fight in the locker room.
Yeah, the media scrum.
Right.
I'd never heard that word scrum before, and then that happened, and I've heard it like 40 times since then.
Well, I think it's a soccer term I think that's what they do with soccer matches over in Europe.
Oh, okay. So that's where it came from. Now it's been Americanized and
Right.
has CM Punk stain all over it.
Right.
You know, I just the whole thing that we're talking about here of how this whole thing could have been done differently. Now I have to think if the WWE could just offer him enough money to lay down his beliefs and come back to the machine and then turn this into an angle for WWE. WWE knows how to do it. They'll let you on television with a microphone. They'll get this out. And I would love to see that happen. I do not see it happening though.
No, I don't either. Although maybe Punk has that desire to do a one more run in the WWE, you know, that type thing. Who knows who's there? Maybe Omega's there. Maybe the Bucks are there. Maybe he tags with Cody and takes on the Bucks, you know, and they make a whole work shoot out of that. And then at the end of that program, he gets inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well, here's a question, and I know that this can be a legal question. It's a Stephen P. New wrestling fan question.
All right.
But is this whole situation a precursor to the end for AEW? I mean, we see things falling apart left and right. We see people asking for their releases left and right. Triple H is running WWE right now. They are not the most valued option when it comes to people who want to be creative. You can go to WWE and be creative now. It's a whole new vibe. So are we seeing this whole thing crumbling?
I don't think so. I think as long as AEW has the backing of Warner Brothers Discovery, I think they're fine.
Well, that's as long as
now,
what happens if that falls out from under?
If that falls out from under them and they're on some streaming service or something, they're in trouble.
It could be a very bad situation. But I don't think that Tony Khan would let that happen. Even if they did lose Warner, I think they would go in another route and make something else happen.
I was having this discussion with Barker the other day, and there's a strange deal involving Warner Brothers Discovery, NBC Universal, and WWE with European showing of WWE on their channels over there. And WWE's got like this exclusive right to be shown. Yeah, I think it's in England. It's going to be interesting to see whether WWE shuts AEW out of certain markets.
That will be interesting as well, and definitely wouldn't be helpful in their process of not or of staying relevant and not
right. So I mean, I think it all hinges on Warner Brothers Discovery.
And I wonder what happens with ROH. You know, if AEW is falling apart, ROH is not going to get enough attention to stay afloat itself.
Right. You know, it's really hard. It's kind of like you're swimming upstream, and oh, by the way, you got another guy under your arm over here, and you're trying to swim, and you're trying to save both of you. You know, ROH. The best thing about ROH was all the Sinclair slots. You know, that should have been negotiated into any deal. Is that, you know, the Sinclair television, because I don't know that without the Sinclair television, ROH has a lot of value.
That's it wouldn't have any value at all if not for AEW at this point.
Right.
What do you think, you know, just in a complete different realm, what do you think about Chris Jericho taking the banner for ROH and being the world champion right now?
Well, I think, you know, that it's another feather in his cap. It's another resume builder, as if he needed more. But
I don't think it's for him. I don't believe it's for him. I believe it is for ROH.
The brand.
Yeah. ROH needs that well-known champion. And really, when you think about it, Chris Jericho is the perfect I mean, just like they used Chris Jericho as the first AEW champion,
right?
They did that for a reason. And now that Jericho's wearing the ROH championship, it kind of brings a prestige. And not saying that the ROH championship wasn't prestigious. There's been tons of really amazing champions, but there never has been an ROH champion to the caliber of Chris Jericho as far as everyone knowing his name.
Right. Well, and it's going to remain to be seen how much did they develop that, on what kind of shows. Are they going to try to get back on some platform or, something? I don't know that you don't turn Friday nights into a 2-hour ROH show on TNT.
I think that might be a better idea. I know Rampage, like it is hard to get through, especially like this past week when it was 2 hours long. It's like, wow.
Right.
This is a lot of wrestling on a Friday night. And on Friday night, everything else is calling your name.
I mean, you could do the same thing. You could still shoot 2 hours of ROH television the same night that you're shooting Dynamite. But, a different look, a different vibe, everything like that. So it's going to, remain to be seen.
All right, so when we finish up here talking about CM Punk, just give me your opinion on where does this all go? Do we see CM Punk back in an AEW ring eventually? Do we see CM Punk go back to WWE? Is this the end? Do we not see CM Punk ever again? What is your take, Stephen P. New?
My take is he shows up in Chicago next Labor Day. Okay. I think he takes a year off. I think he heals. I think he trains. I think the Bucks come back in about 6 months, maybe sooner. I think Omega comes back somewhere between those, like 6, 9, and 12 months. And then Tony may want it to be like, Bobby from Dallas in the shower and he wasn't really killed and all of that. Oh, that never even happened, type of a thing. Or he could try to look at it with the work shoot. I don't think CM Punk goes back to WWE just yet, though. I think he does eventually. I don't think it's within the next 12 months.
So you do believe eventually we're going to see CM Punk back in the WWE?
I do. But I think it's after I think it's after one more AEW run.
Another casualty that we didn't bring up was the Trios Championship. And the Trios Championship, I have been extremely excited about because this is the first wrestling company in my existence of watching wrestling that has actually done the 6-man tag correctly. All their 6-man tags are really exceptional matches. When you see a 6-man tag in WWE, it's a time filler. It's right. So that everyone can have a light night. The trios matches are not like that at all. It is not a light match. It is not a light night for anyone. And it's a really awesome thing to watch. And so the Trios Championship idea was really exciting to me because I was thinking about Omega and the Bucks. I was thinking about Adam Cole and Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly. Well, they waited so long to introduce the Trios Championship. Then they finally introduce it. They lose Bobby Fish. So that trio is gone. You don't have that elite versus, undisputed. You don't get that. Then as soon as we get the trios titles on Omega and the Bucks, who really should have been the winners to begin with, then we have this situation where they get stripped of the title. And I don't think that was the right move. If I'm Tony Khan, I'm not stripping CM Punk. I'm not stripping the Bucks. And I'm going to use this thing to garner as much attention as possible, even if they won't wrestle each other. Even if I can't talk them into the work shoot, I'm not stripping them of the championships. They're going to have to quit.
Well, I make them wrestle each other. I book Punk and FTR versus Omega and the Bucks.
Mm-hmm. I have them take the trio title from them. Why not?
That's exactly right.
Everyone here should be working professionals, and I wish that is the world that we lived in, because I feel like Tony Khan he made AEW look weak. He made himself look weak by going with all of the online stuff, with everybody CM Punk should be suspended. Young Bucks and Kenny Omega should be suspended, and these people should be stripped, and all of that stuff. And it's like, have these fans never been wrestling fans before? Wrestling is supposed to be organized chaos. Bring the chaos. That is what I want out of my professional wrestling. So this situation was great, in my opinion. I would love that. I was also a big fan of Sergeant Slaughter siding with Iraq, though, and everyone seems to hate that. So who knows? Maybe it's just a me thing, but I want chaos.
It felt good in the moment.
It did.
And as a guy who was wearing a uniform at the time, for this old guy to come out there and say, we're going to get our butts kicked in Iraq. That's massive heat.
It made you feel something, did it not?
Yeah. To tell me that the Pepsi Generation X was going to lose badly to Iraq. Now, the funny thing was you had the Iron Sheik who was from Iran. And Iraq and Iran, if you knew anything at all in the 80s, had just finished a bloody 10-year war. So that part of it was kind of stupid. That Colonel Mustafa, who was from Iran, was now sympathizing with Iraq. But of course, it was all against the great Satan, the United States. So,
but it created such chaos that the fucking president wanted to cancel WrestleMania, and that is chaos, and it is realism in the sport of professional wrestling, and that is what.
The funny thing was, Desert Storm, we whipped Iraq so fast that Desert Storm was over by the time WrestleMania happened that year. The boys were already coming back home by April.
So much for the Pepsi generation not being able to kick ass.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But January to about May, that was that fight.
So as the world turns, we will find out if CM Punk comes back to a wrestling ring, an AEW wrestling ring, a WWE wrestling ring. Is he going to be wrestling at your local carnival? I don't know where we're going to see CM Punk again, and neither do you, and neither do all the people listening. So we're just going to have to wait and see how this whole thing pans out. But I hope it pans out for the best for us, because that is what I want. I want more wrestling action, and
we need a strong competitor to WWE. I'm thankful. How many years did you and I on this show and other shows talk about that Vince McMahon was the largest impediment to professional wrestling evolving, becoming better, going back to its good stuff instead of his stupidity. But there does really need to be some healthy, viable alternatives to World Wrestling Entertainment too.
That is very, very, very true. One thing I want to bring up before we get out of here is WrestleCade is coming up. It is barreling at us very, very quickly, and we've got a lot of stuff planned for WrestleCade, a lot of big stars, including the guy who just lost the Ring of Honor championship, Claudio Castagnoli, will be at our table signing autographs, and we have quite a few others. Heath's going to be there, Brian Myers, Matt Cardona, Warhorse, Aubrey Edwards.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
The dirty white boy, Tony Anthony. I get to be a kid again, hanging out with Tony Anthony. I'm excited about that. We've got a lot coming up at WrestleCade, including the return of Franchised with Shane Douglas, which will be live at WrestleCade with Francine and Shane Douglas. It's going to be a very exciting weekend, and we cannot wait to be there. There's some big names. The Big Show is going to be there this year.
Right. A lot of first-time guys that are coming there. A lot of people are excited to see Claudio.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you. So, Brian, this weekend, Lex Luger is in Madison.
Really?
Yeah. At All-Star Wrestling, our friend Gary Dameron. And then on November the 5th, Matt Cardona makes his return as the All-Star Wrestling Heavyweight Champion to Madison, West Virginia. So it's going to be a strong end to 2022 in the wrestling world here.
Sounds very exciting. And also make sure that you stay tuned to our YouTube. If you haven't clicked subscribe, now is the time. Click subscribe and make sure you click the little bell so you get your first notifications. And remember, we have a video coming out very soon where we are going to analyze the state of Triple H's WWE. That will be coming up very soon right here on the Kayfabe stream. But for now, for me, Brian Resner, and that man over there, Stephen P. New, God of all law, he is here, I am here, and we are gone. Thank you so much for joining us right here on the House of Kayfabe.